Excellent. Good morning to the new network. We have an exciting guest today, legendary guitarist from Genesis, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, Steve Hackett. He is going to be telling us about his new album, The Circus and the Night Whale, and of course, his current tour, Foxtrot at 50 and Hackett Highlights. Steve, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Nice to talk to you, James. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's our pleasure having you. So, who is Travla and why is he the protagonist of your new album, The Circus, the Night Whale?
Well, my wife and I were talking about doing a kind of autobiographical story in music, and she was the one who suggested the Circus and the Night Whale. She was busy explaining to me, what both those things meant to her because we wrote the stuff together. So there is that aspect of the circus. Rock and roll, of course, and circuses have long gone together. The Night Whale was something that was her invention. She came up with an idea of something where you're facing your darkest fears and having to deal with your demons and dealing with things that were on the verge of a nervous breakdown at one point. But I never went public with that. I just kind of did it quietly and got on with things. I think to fight for independence, freedom, and autonomy was a lot to do with it. Of course, I was in the band Genesis. That was marvelous for me at first, and we built it into a kind of international success. We also went in blood for it back in the day. And that was fantastic, but it started to become restrictive, and it was the same reason that Peter Gabriel really left the band, parallel solo career, and the band really weren't up for that. And the same thing with me. I wanted to be able to make albums on my own. I did one, and I had success with that, but it created problems within the band. I suspect jealousies and the idea that you're not being, one of the four musketeers or five in our case, Just one of those things happen when you're 21. Maybe you've got a different mindset from when you're 25. When you're growing up, families arrive, you're having children, all sorts of stuff. You're not the same person that you are when you're just out of your teens. So autonomy was a big deal for me. To not have to ask or record a song. And of course, in a band, you're constantly composing by committee, which is a very tricky thing.
Oh, definitely. But yeah, I mean, based on what I've read and what I've seen and what I've heard so far, it sounds phenomenal. And I am definitely interested in reading the book about Travla or watching a movie about him. I think this character could be developed so much more and could really be something phenomenal.
Well, I think that, the idea of doing it in the first person came up first of all, but then we wanted to make it more fantastical and historical later on. So if you want to do all that symbolic stuff, you had to really stretch into a third person, which is why you've got the idea of Travla as someone outside yourself. I think, you start off as one thing in life, but I think when you're a babe, just trying to learn to breathe and get through, you're not the same person once you've been through a number of experiences. So I'm as different today as any man you might meet in the street.
I can imagine you're quite excited about the Foxtrot at 50 and Hackett Highlights tour. I know the fans
Yeah.
are. I was wondering, and I'm sure they are too, will there be any time to include some GTR songs in that tour?
Ah, well, now that's funny that you should up because, again, I was having a conversation with my wife today where we were saying that GTR didn't really mean anything to the Europeans at all, but in America, it was a different story. I hadn't intended to do that, but Steve Rothery and I did a re-record of When the Heart Rules the Mighty, the hit that we had with GTR when I was working with Steve Howe. But there's a very nice version that we've done that so far appeared on a number of the album, but he and I have been doing, and maybe that will appear as part of the album that we do together. So meeting with bated breath to see how that comes out eventually. We've done lots of jamming, so it's great saying, oh, yeah, this is it. Here we are. We've got something. It's ready to go. Do we get obviously the metal? Do we have the occasional vocal? So who knows? It, the life can make it can have very surprising twists and turns.
Oh, definitely. You mentioned the joy that you've gotten from working with your wife, but I understand it's not just limited to her. You have a brother that you perform with as well.
That's right. Yeah. Well, my brother is on this album. We occasionally do shows together. My brother and I, we were in the same band one time. He was working in my band, but he has his own band these days, his own commitments. And but like me, he makes albums that are very different from each other. One minute he'll do a rock thing or a jazz rock thing. He works with a brilliant guitarist called Nick Fletcher, and but other times, he'll do classical stuff. Again, sometimes it's the two of them doing that, just like I did with John a few years ago. We were doing some Eric Satie stuff, French impressionist stuff from way back, and I believe he's done the same as me, recorded Bach stuff and all of that as well as the rock stuff. So we're pretty busy between the two of us. He's on the album sounding very, very good on one of the tracks.
That is awesome. So it sounds like you've got a ton going on with the new album, the Circus and the Night Whale, and then of course the big tour, the Foxtrot at 50 and Hackett highlights. So I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of great stuff going on. Where can our listeners find out more? Where on social media? Where on the web? Where's the best place for the?
Yeah, well, there's a website and it's hackettfilm.com. So that's got all the details of everything. So the stuff we're doing is really completing something that we started last year, which is a couple of months. This time we're concentrating on mainly the American South and going down to Mexico, Spanish there. Looking forward to that.
Awesome. Well, Steve, it has been a pleasure having you on today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank
Well, that was legendary legendary guitarist from Genesis, Steve Hackett. He's of course in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, as you all know from his time with Genesis. He's got that new album, The Circus and the Night Whale. He's got that new tour, Foxtrot at 50 and Hackett highlights. So, gosh, a lot of great stuff going on there with him. It was a pleasure having him on the show today.